He's going to be talking to senators. Tomorrow, he's going to be talking to House Republicans about this immigration debate because it's firing up again this week.
The zero tolerance policy means zero humanity, and it makes zero sense.
There has been a lot of misinformation surrounding President Trump's shelters for migrant children at the border. So what are they really like?
They have doctors, they have psychologists, they have trained social workers. All of them want to help these children.
Michael Horowitz is going to answer some questions in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, along with Chris Wray.
Peter Strzok is willing to testify before the House Judiciary Committee.
This guy has the goods on everybody. And if he decides to come clean, this could be a really bad day for senior people at the FBI and their decision-making.
German Chancellor Angela Merkel welcomed 1 million refugees into her country with open arms, and this morning that move could actually cost her job. There's a company, and they had this great idea. We're going to put as many American flags as we can. The man from code enforcement, have to take him down.
And now that man has a change of heart.
Monday, June 18th, it's 8 o'clock here in New York City. You're watching Fox and Friends, the world's #1 cable morning news show. Thanks to folks like you who get up and watch us every morning.
Let's make this a great week. Aren't we grateful to be alive? We're so fortunate and so blessed. We're going to have a fun week.
Yes, thank goodness. Meanwhile, I'm glad to have survived the weekend.
What happened?
Well, there's a lot going on. It was
Father's
hot.
Day.
Right?
Wasn't that hot?
Okay. All right, that was
Hot
all
today.
Right. It's
How
hot
was your
today.
Father's Day?
It was great. Over the 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I saw all my children in 2 different
That
towns.
sounds like a soap opera.
It was very nice.
All my children.
By the way, we might even show that picture again.
The picture of his kids?
No, of all of us.
All right, what did you do for
Maybe.
Father's Day?
Right. We went over to my mom's house in the afternoon, and there we gathered. And it was great.
And there we gathered.
Right. Meanwhile, when it comes, and we talked about illegal immigration, how we're going to stop it as
exactly.
a family.
Very fitting for this week.
Right.
Why is that, Brian?
Well, for one thing, the immigration debate is raging because we've got 2 programs on Capitol Hill that have the president's backing. One more moderate than the Goodlatte bill that's going to be making its way forward. But both attack 3 pillars. The lottery, they want to get rid of it. The wall, $25 billion, but it's how it's going to be divided up. And also a pathway to citizenship. Chain migration, I'm not sure in the Paul Ryan version, but they have the 1.8 million DACA kids who have to sign up for it that might be eligible for a pathway to citizenship.
But those are the 4 pillars. The president has made very clear that that's the stuff he would have on his dream ticket. And tomorrow night, he's actually going to be meeting with 2 key Republican senators, including Shelley Moore Capito, Capito from the Republican from West Virginia, whose committee is in charge of funding the wall. Now, what's going on
Senator
right now?
Shelby.
Separately. One of the things, if you were watching television over the weekend, Democrats have made a political issue what is going on at the southern border, where children are taken from people who try to enter this country illegally, and they talk about how you can't do that. Well, the administration now is being very aggressive in making sure that you understand what the law really is.
Yeah, and the president has said he wants to build the wall, and that way he's saying so that people in Mexico, whether or not they know the law or not, that they can't just walk across the border, that will prevent them from doing it, and it will allow them to go to the checkpoint areas. They can sit there with our Border Patrol agents, tell their stories, if they're really in danger in their communities with their kids, and we will let them in, and then a judge will decide whether or not they get to stay once they hear their situation. And that's what Kristen Nielsen, she is the Border Patrol, she is the what's her title? Secretary of Homeland Security. All right, she tweeted this out. This misreporting by members, press, and advocacy groups must stop. It is irresponsible and unproductive. As I have said many times before, if you are seeking asylum for your family, there's no reason to break the law and illegally cross between ports of entry. You are not breaking the law by seeking asylum at a port of entry. We do not have a policy of separating families at the border, period. For those seeking asylum at ports of entry, we have continued the policy from previous administrations administrations and will only separate if the child is in danger, there is no custodial relationship between family members, or if the adult has broken a law.
And that last line is important. If the adult has broken the law. If you try to come into the country illegally and you got kids with you, they are going to separate the children from the adults. Criminals are separated from their kids.
Look at everyone in prison.
Every day
Yeah.
in the United States of America. We did get some images released to us in the last hour. These are from Border Patrol. This is of a former warehouse that has been converted to a facility. And, you know, while some have likened it to concentration camps or cages, you do see that they have those thermal blankets. You do see some fencing, but keep in mind, some have referred to them as cages, but keep in mind, this is a great big warehouse facility where they built walls out of chain link fences.
Are you okay with another surge at our border, despite what the president sent word to the world that we're going to enforce our border? All that is gone. They're coming back in droves. So our border needs reinforcement. So what are you going to do? What John Kelly brought up when he was Homeland Security Secretary, and Stephen Miller, who is a former aide to Sessions, now with the president, they said the way to deter future people from coming to the border is to let them know if you come here illegally with your family, you're going to be separated because you're breaking our law. That's the message sent. The other thing to keep in mind, too, Mexico was failing. So you've got 113 politicians who were assassinated. Cartels are overrunning that country. So these people are coming here because they have nowhere else to go. Honduras, El Salvador is overrun with gangs. So these people with their problems in their country are sending their people here sometimes to wreak havoc on our border.
So the question is, if you're south of our border and you know the rules, and the Attorney General has made it very clear, zero tolerance. If you know the rules, are you going to chance having your family separated if you break the law by going ahead and continuing on, or are you going to say, you know what? I'll just wait for him to change the law completely.
This is why it's important to have immigration reform. The president's wife, Melania, our first lady, her spokesperson said on behalf of Melania, we need to be a country that follows the law, but also a country that governs with heart.
Well, Laura Bush brought up the fact, wrote an editorial today. She compared it to what we did to the Japanese during World War II, which I think is an unfair comparison.
I'm not sure that the same. No, I do believe those laws that the Department of Homeland Security was using were in effect back during her husband's administration as well, I believe. Meanwhile, we had Joel Pollack on. He's a senior editor at large at Breitbart, and he says he actually toured one of the facilities, and he said the treatment these children are getting is pretty darn good.
They have doctors, they have psychologists, they have trained social workers, administrators, and all of them want to help these children. Often the kids come there without any knowledge of basic hygiene. They come from some of the poorest places in Central America. The staff there give them toiletries, they give them new clothes. They sometimes have to teach them how to shower, how to use a flush toilet. They give them an education. This is a place where they really have the welfare of the kids at heart. And they come there from Border Patrol facilities. They're in a difficult situation, but the goal is to ring that reunion bell that sits right at the front of the facility.
And I was just looking. One of the the White House and the administration has talked about we need a new immigration reform to close these loopholes. One of the things that they would like that is providing trouble for them is a Clinton-era Flores settlement agreement, where the United States is forced to release an entire family into the interior of the United States, and that is what one of the hang-ups is right now. The administration is saying, just fix it, change the rules so that everything is fair and safe.
And the problem is the Russia investigations go nowhere. The IG report seems to back up a lot of what the president said. The economy's on a roll, and they can't get traction on anything else. And I think a lot of Democrats are using this as an opportunity to grandstand, like, for example, Nancy Pelosi sometime today. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell, a Democrat from Mississippi, Missouri. Michigan, I should say.
This shouldn't be Democratic or Republican. We need to, as Americans, start to deal with some of these issues. And these young babies that are being separated from their parents, at what point do we say, okay, what will you do? I've said, I think a wall is stupid. I think it's a wall of division. But if you'll work with us and we can do something, I'll support the wall to do something morally about these issues.
So what you...
And the answer might be going to these countries and trying to straighten them out.
Well, and I mean, like she said, though, the wall could prevent people
Right.
from breaking the law. If they don't know the law in Mexico, then they can't cross that wall. They're going to be forced to go to the port of entry, and then we can find out who they are, hear their stories. If their stories are, if they're in dangerous communities and they haven't broken the law, they aren't criminals, we'll let you in. We'll just explain how to do it the right way to
Well,
keep our country safe.
And you look at Mexico, and you look at Honduras, and you look at El Salvador, and those, we've talked to those countries, and we've said, look, we're having a problem, but they just keep the people coming. Nonetheless, it's up to us.
And keep in
That's
mind,
what the president says.
if they come over the border with their children and then they're arrested and they are separated from
If they
their
break
kids,
the law,
if they break the law,
if they're
then
not trying to get asylum.
Right, then where do they go? They go to a detention center, they get booked, they get the paperwork, they go through all that, and then I assume they're reunited with their kids, right, and sent back to their country and taught how to get on the list to get in the right way?
Not necessarily, because if you break the law, just criminals are separated from their kids every day in this country.
Correct.
It's whether, if you rob a bank or
You make
if
the
you come
choice
into the
to do
country.
that, you're choosing to be separated.
It's just not extraordinary. But the headline is, if you watch a lot of channels, they're talking about how these children are being ripped from their families. The part that is troubling, though, is the conscious decision that the parents are making. They're thinking, okay, it's worth it. I'm going to try it because I'll have a better life in the United States. But at the same time, just know there's a zero tolerance policy now, and the kids and the families will not be kept intact if they break the law.
So we do have sympathy for those parents. There is, who wouldn't? You don't want a parent to be separated from their child.
You don't.
But you're right. If they make the choice to do it, there are consequences. And that's why the wall would prevent it.
Well, maybe in some cases. 11 minutes
Wouldn't
after the
hurt.
hour. Jillian, what's
Hi, Brian.
happening?
Ainsley, Steve.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on your news, starting with the Fox News alert. 2 people are under arrest in the 2012 stabbing death of a U.S. Marine. Major George Anacal killed during a fight near his home in the Philippines, leaving behind a wife and children. The U.S. ambassador to the Philippines, Sung Kim, confirming the news, tweeting, quote, "I congratulate the NBI for their arrest of 2 of the perpetrators in the violent death of George Anacal, bringing some measure of justice to this senseless crime." At least 5 illegal immigrants are killed trying to outrun Border Patrol agents. 12 people ejected from an SUV in a rollover crash near the Texas-Mexico border. The chase reaching speeds of up to 100 miles per hour. Officials demanding tighter border security following the crash.
Every day, my deputies are getting into pursuits. I think we need more boots on the ground. We need more patrol. I think we need a wall, in my opinion.
The driver, a U.S. citizen, is under arrest. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo will discuss America's economic revival in his first public appearance since returning from Asia. Pompeo will speak to the Detroit Economic Club at Ford Field this afternoon. He had been overseas discussing the North Korea summit with neighbors of the rogue regime. Let's look at your headlines. I'll send it back to you.
All right.
Thanks
Thank you
so
very
much.
much. All right, coming up, he vowed to stop President Trump from winning the election, and this morning, disgraced FBI agent Peter Strzok says he wants to testify before Congress. Alan Dershowitz here with reaction coming up next.
Plus, former President Obama could be going back to school. We'll explain.
In a fever pitch, former CIA Director Michael Hayden tweeting this photo comparing the treatment of migrant children at the border to concentration camps during the Holocaust.
Here to weigh in on this is Harvard Law Professor Emeritus and author of The Case Against Impeaching Trump, Alan Dershowitz. Thank you, Professor, for being with us.
Thank you.
What's your reaction to that tweet and that picture comparing the shelters here to concentration camps?
Well, Michael Hayden is a great man. He was a great public servant, but I think making comparisons to death camps and concentration camps is a form of Holocaust denial. But I would like to take 1 minute and just say something directly to President Trump. Look, he watches the show. President Trump, I've been defending your civil liberties and will continue to do so on this show, but you have to end this policy of separating parents from children, not because of the parents, but because of the children. It imposes a trauma on the children. It's just unacceptable. It's just not proper. There are other ways of doing this. You can send the parents and the children back together. You can do other things, but separating parents from children, no matter where you put them, no matter how the facilities may look, and my former student, Joel Pollack, says they look like decent facilities. It's not the facilities. It's the act of separating the parents from the children.
Right.
And, Mr. President, it just has to stop. There are better ways of doing this. You're better than this. The American people are better than this. The American government is better than this. So I implore you to stop it now.
Alan?
Then we can deal with other ways of focusing on the serious problem of immigration, but stop it now.
It is a serious problem. And this week, Mr. Dershowitz, it sounds like Congress is going to come out, present a couple of bills to see if they can do something about it. Ultimately, they need to change the laws that are on the book because the regulations are what the regulations are.
I agree with you, but the president has the authority to stop it. He can, this morning after watching this show, simply say no more separating of parents from children. When you have a child with you, you're sent back immediately. Sure, that means that they're not prosecuted for the crime, but that's a lesser evil than wrenching apart parents from children. I don't want to exaggerate it. It's bad enough the way it is. And I think if the president listens to his wife, listens to others in the administration, there are many people in this administration who think this is a dangerous and immoral policy. And I think it has to stop. Then, once we stop it, we can introduce bills in Congress. We can take care of the more general problem. But today, the idea of separating parents and children have to stop.
All right, we'll see about that. Peter Strzok, real quick, testifying, what would Alan Dershowitz ask him? Because he wants to clear his name.
First question is, when you said you intend to stop the election of President Trump, you, an FBI director, said you were going to stop the election. How could you stop the election legally? And what does it mean when American people hear an FBI agent saying he's going to interfere with an American election? How do you explain that term? Stop it from happening. He can't explain that. It's wrong. He should be fired.
Yeah, well, why he's still got a job, it's unbelievable. But he says he has a point to make. Alan, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, coming up straight ahead, the video is insane. You got a roof collapsing onto tourists riding an escalator. The shocking moments caught on camera.
Plus, remember this picture of Angela Merkel trying to show her power over President Trump? Well, this morning, she could be losing her power, all thanks to her open border policies. That's straight ahead on Fox and Friends.
Patient to go to trial against Monsanto. Over 1,000 people are suing that company, claiming the popular weed killer Roundup gave them cancer. Johnson's case is the first to go to trial because doctors say the 46-year-old is nearing death. And a punishment on Game of Thrones could soon be brought to life. New York State Assembly hopeful Steve Saperstein drawing inspiration from this scene. The Republican wants politicians convicted of corruption to take a public perp walk near the Capitol in Albany. Brian?
Thanks, Ainsley. I'm over here. Remember this viral photo of Angela Merkel trying to show her power over President Trump at the G7 summit? They were actually waiting for paperwork. Well, it turns out she might be losing that power any day now. The German chancellor facing open rebellion from her power within her own government because of her own open door policy started in 2015 when it comes to immigrants. Joining us right now, Tom Rogan, Washington Examiner commentary writer. How much trouble is she in, Tom?
Hi, Brian. She's in a lot of trouble. The issue that the Chancellor faces here is that a very mainstream, conservative, rural-based party, a Bavarian conservative party, which is the partner in her coalition government, is really putting its foot down and saying, we are not going to allow for these refugees or migrants to be able to come into Germany, and that we control the Interior Ministry, so it's our remit to let them in. And Merkel is saying, well, you have to. And so if she fires the Interior Minister, who is the leader of that partner party, it looks like the coalition will collapse and that Merkel really will be heading home as a private citizen. So she's in big trouble.
Again, this is about a politician who thinks they know more than the people. Because if you look at some polling, the German poll shows that 62% of their citizens believe that refugees without papers should not be allowed in. The problem is she doesn't believe it.
Right, and I do think it's important to emphasize here that in the demographics, in terms of the German population, which is more center-left than the United States electorate, for example, this widespread concern about migration and the levels of migration is really, apart from the left-wing parties in Germany, across the board, from the center to the right. And Chancellor Merkel is out on a fringe in terms of her own position with conservatives.
Right.
And what you see here is a quite sort of significant populist pushback.
Right. You also bring up, too, that people have responded in Europe. In Austria, for example, they elected an anti-immigrant candidate. Italy, the same thing. They're reflecting what the people want, and that is not anti-immigrant, but pro their citizens first.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. And I think also there is a context here of rising criminality, which to a statistical degree is part of the migrant problem. And so Germans say, well, we are allowing a lot of people in without necessarily enough time to integrate. There are obviously economic considerations. Much of the same issues you see here that motivated President Trump. And I also think in the same way that perhaps Hillary Clinton and some Democrats neglected that to their peril in the presidential election, Chancellor Merkel has neglected that in the last few years, and now the whirlwind is coming home to reap its hard rendering.
I see that most of the 1.6 million migrants since 2015 that have poured into Germany are from Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. And we'll see. The European Union certainly has a say in that. And when will we actually know if the people of Bavaria are going to speak up and change course maybe for the country?
Well, I think within the next week. I mean, probably actually today, tomorrow, because they have crisis meetings. And I think one way or the other, either the Merkel accepts the interior minister position or she fires him and the coalition enters crisis mode.
Wow. It's going to be interesting. Tom Rogan, thanks so much.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, 2 minutes before the bottom of the hour. Democrats like Nancy Pelosi have been slamming the Trump administration over shelters for immigrant children. Today, they're heading to the border to get a firsthand look. We're live next. And the American economy is booming under President Trump, but you will not see that in the New York Times. They're blaming him for the world's economic problems because of trade. Deputy Press Secretary Hogan Gidley here to react to that reaction next. Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi and other Democrats visiting the southern border today.
More than a dozen lawmakers touring a facility housing children separated from their parents or adults who have illegally crossed the border.
William Lajeunesse is live in San Diego with what we can expect. Good morning, William.
Good morning, Ainsley. I am at actually a processing facility along the border, many of them here, California, Texas, Arizona. Speaker Pelosi, or former Speaker Pelosi, will be at a shelter nearby in El Cajon and Lemon Grove. But I want to tell you, I think this controversy is part policy, part politics, and here's why. Both presidents, Obama and Trump, expanded the zero tolerance policy, meaning if you cross the border without permission, you'll be prosecuted first time, misdemeanor, second time, a felony. Secondly, both presidents, facing a surge from Central America of families and minors, separated children from the adults who brought them here. And advocacy groups at the time complained, but Democratic leaders at the time did not when President Obama earned that title of deporter-in-chief. Now, however, congressmen, Democratic congressmen, Texas, New Jersey, California, are calling this practice cruel and barbaric.
This is inhumane. I'd like to say it's un-American, but it's happening right now in America, and it is on all of us, not just the Trump administration. This is on all of us.
So the policy that brought us here is known as Operation Streamline. It was initiated in 2006 by President Bush and greatly expanded by President Obama because it was so successful. Nearly across the border, he increased prosecutions for criminal reentry by 200%. Now, as a deterrent. Secondly, he also expanded the alien relocation program, meaning if you were arrested in Texas, you'd be deported from California. That separated adults from children. And finally, like President Trump, children who are often separated from the adults who brought them here under anti-trafficking statute. And yesterday, DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen basically said that's what they are doing. Quoting, "For those seeking asylum at the ports of entry, we have continued the policy of previous administrations and will only separate a child if it is in danger, if there is no custodial relationship between family members, or if the adult has broken the law." So you guys, the bottom line is you either have catch and release or you have catch and hold. And when you try to hold families or children, you can't do that because of 2 court decisions. So President Trump, in basically charging them criminally, is separating the adults, some of the children, in some cases, to try to achieve that, to try to have some deterrence from those coming from Central America. Back to you.
There you go, William Lajeunesse. I think you're right. It's a collision of policy and politics.
Right. He ended catch and release. So it's right now up to Hogan Gidley to explain. He's White House press secretary, special assistant to the president. So, Hogan, do you think the message from the media is correct, that your administration is separating parents, moms and kids?
It is completely false. This is all the Democrats doing, and let's be clear about what they're asking us to understand and believe. Democrats are saying you can't deport them, you can't detain them, you can't prosecute them. The only thing you can do, per a Democrat, is to release them into the interior without any ramification for what they've done by breaking our laws. It's absolutely incredible. There are only 1 of 2 things that can happen when they come here. You have to either release them into the interior of the United States as a family unit, or you have to separate the families. That's what the law says. Right. This is up to the Democrats. They could fix this right now. If you close those loopholes, we could do this humanely, and quite frankly, the Democrats' policies put drug cartels in business. They're raking in money hand over fist, sending people to this country carrying drugs, and also the child smuggling industry. International child smuggling is up because Democrats create incentives by not closing these loopholes. You have to stop this because we have to protect this country, and we have to do this humanely.
Hogan, let's talk about the humane part. We got from the Border Patrol some of the images inside these detention facilities. And you can see some have likened them to concentration camps. Some refer to these as cages. And I can understand that point of view. Look, I'm from a farm community. To me, I see the chain link fences. It's more like a security pen to me. Nonetheless, whether you call it a cage, you call it a pen, the images are stark.
Yeah, absolutely. It's heart-wrenching. You see what's going on out there. But listen, Steve, you stood here last week with the president. I was standing 5 feet behind you. You heard what he said. He doesn't like this, but he also understands it's the law of the land. You have to enforce these laws. The situation at the border is a crisis, and it's put there because this president, quite frankly, tried to fix it over about 9 months ago. He put out a 70-point immigration plan to fix all of these issues, to cure all of the woes facing this country as it relates to immigration. Democrats balked at it. Fast forward a little bit, you see the Schumer shutdown. The Democrats decided to stand with people who are here illegally and unlawfully by the hundreds of thousands, as opposed to hundreds of millions of American citizens. They're doing it again. They're playing politics with people's lives. They're doing it on the backs of children.
Republicans have the majority
grotesque
in the House and Senate, Hogan.
Right, but you have to change the law, Brian, and the only way you change the law is with 60 votes in the Senate. We don't have that. The Republicans are together in this, united in this, trying to stop child smuggling, protect the family unit. Democrats don't want it because they want it as a political issue.
Hogan, when they're arrested and they're separated, the moms and dads go to jail, and then their babies, their children go to these shelters. Is there any way that we could just keep them together, send them back to their country, and teach them how to get on the list so that they can come to our country legally?
Well, that's the problem. I heard Alan Dershowitz say earlier that you could just send them back together as a family unit. You can't. The law doesn't say that. Because you have a minor involved, it makes it much more difficult, meaning the minor has to stay, potentially, via the law, and then you have to deport the parents. That's the problem. There is a separation that occurs because the law exists that way. It's a farce to believe you can keep them together. And remember, as I said at the outset of this segment, Democrats say you can't detain them. So if you can't detain them, you can't deport them, you have to release them into the interior of the country. It's a complete false choice, but it can be fixed so simply if they would just close these loopholes. And look, let's be honest. If people do come into this country illegally and unlawfully and then are released without documentation, every crime that someone like that commits is 100% preventable. And I understand the Democrats are upset about temporary separation of families who come here illegally.
Yeah, it's hard to
Where's
see.
the outcry for the permanent separation when one of these people come to this country, commit a crime, kill an American citizen either with their own hand or via the drugs they distribute? No one comes to their defense. The permanent separation is the biggest abomination, and no Democrats coming out decrying that at all.
It would seem like this is a perfect time because you've got the Democrats talking about these security pens or these cages being used to house these children. You've got the issue of the Dreamers. You've got the Republicans, many of whom want to end chain migration, the diversity lottery program, and build a wall. It seems like everybody wants something, so this would be a great time for some sort of gigantic grand bargain, and I think a lot of people will be disappointed unless this is fixed.
Look, absolutely. This is what the president has been pushing for more than a year. We want a permanent, a lasting solution to the DACA problem. We want to end chain migration. You remember the 4 pillars, ending the visa lottery, building the wall. All these things can be done that protect the American people and stop this problem immediately. Because if you put a wall up across the border, then it forces immigrants who come to this country to come to the ports of entry. If they come to the port of entry, it's a much safer, much better situation.
Right,
for them,
Hogan,
no
real
question.
quick, there's 2 House plans that are going to get voted on. Does the president back both of them, the Goodlatte plan and the Ryan?
Use this verbiage and these claims, and you'll be let out for free because Democrats refuse to close the loopholes. It's a dangerous situation for this country, and it's all on the backs of the Democrats.
Well, fast forward. What are the chances, if you were a betting man, Hogan, and I know for a fact you are, what are the chances they do get something through Congress that the president signs?
I hope it's good. I don't want to get into a percentage game here, but listen, we've seen the images. We know that there's a lot of blame flying around this city, and it's a shame. But the facts are on the side of the Republicans. The facts are on the side of this president who's been trying to fix this. He's been the champion, and you know it was a good plan and right down the middle because he got attacked from the right and from the left. You knew it was a bipartisan plan he put forth, and that's the telltale sign. When both sides are angry at you, it's clear he stands with the American people. 80% of the people want a fix, they deserve a fix, and they need one right now.
There you go. All right, Hogan Gidley from the North Lawn of the White House. Hogan, thank you very much.
Thanks, Hogan.
Thanks so much for the time, y'all.
Sure. All right. 42 minutes after the top of the hour. Much of the focus right now is on the migrant children, as we've been talking about this morning. But what about American parents whose children were killed by illegals? The son of our next guest is one of those victims, and she has a message that everyone needs to hear.
And remember, the business ordered to remove its American flag display of 200 flags because it was too excessive? Well, that company fought back and won, and those proud workers will join us live in about 5.
Good morning to you. Back with some quick headlines. A good guy with a gun stopping an attempted carjacker in a Washington state Walmart parking lot. The man tried to steal 2 cars. One driver was shot when he refused to give his up. As the gunman approached another driver, a bystander pulled out a concealed weapon and shot the suspect dead.
He is a hero. He is a hero. He took action, and like I said, I really think more people could easily have been shot. He saved us all, probably. I mean, come on, he saved us all.
Before the suspect entered the Walmart parking lot, he tried to carjack a 16-year-old girl. She suffered minor injuries. Shocking moments when a roof comes crumbling down, sending people running for their lives. You can see a group of people at a popular Chinese tourist spot on an escalator look up and realize the ceiling is about to land right on top of them. At least 9 people were hurt, but incredibly none seriously. An investigation is now underway. Let's look at your headlines. I'll send it downstairs to
All
Steve.
right. Thank you very much. Democrats, some of them are focusing their attention on the separation of migrant children and parents or adults at the border. But while those lawmakers are focusing on the treatment of children of illegal immigrants, who's talking about the American parents who lost their children at the hands of people who are in the country illegally? Marianne Mendoza's son, Sergeant Brandon Mendoza, was an Arizona police officer when he was killed in a head-on collision with an illegal who was drunk driving. And she joins us right now from Phoenix with reaction. Marianne, good morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Marianne, you've been listening. We were just talking to Hogan Gidley about these images are stark. From the Border Patrol, it shows inside these detention facilities. Some refer to them as cages, and I can understand why they would refer to them like that because they do have the chain link sides. Where I come from, I'd call it like a security pen. But nonetheless, you hate to think about kids being in something like that. But at the same time, you know what the president's trying to do when he says that he's trying to have zero tolerance.
These migrants have direction from the people in South America and Mexico on how to get into America easier. Kidnappings are up in South America and Mexico. They know that if they have a child when they arrive at the border, even if they cross where it's not a port of entry, they feel that they're going to be shown more leniency because of these children. People need to start looking into what the fate of these children would have been had they been left with the people that they crossed the border with, because I think the large percentage is they are not the biological children of these adults who are coming over our border. So the facilities that they're in and the care that's being taken after they've been dragged across the desert and across Mexico for how many days and miles, and maybe not having enough water, food, and whatever, it's not inhumane treatment. And what would a homeless American child or a homeless veteran do to have those kind of facilities and 3 square meals? These are the people and that Americans and our politicians are forgetting about. Right. Those are the people who need to be cared about. There's a rape epidemic going on in North Carolina of young children by illegal aliens, and I haven't heard one politician stand up for American children who are being raped and tortured by these illegal criminals who cross our border.
Okay. Marianne, the reason I mentioned it in my lead-up question to you about what the president says he's trying to do is because he just sent out a new tweet. It reads, "Why don't the Democrats give us the votes to fix the world's worst immigration laws? Where's the outcry for the killings and crime being caused by gangs and thugs, including MS-13, coming into our country illegally?" And that's exactly what you're talking about right there, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm a part of AVIAC, which is Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime, and we did send a press release out recently that said this is extortion to the American people, what these politicians are doing and trying to cram all of this immigration BS down our throats. Not providing E-Verify, not getting the proper funding for our border walls, allowing these DACA people to stay, chain migration, all of these things that they want. Where is the concern for their fellow Americans? Over 4,300 American citizens are killed every year by illegal aliens. And when have you ever heard our stories on liberal media or heard one liberal politician talk about us?
Well, we're telling your story right here. Marianne Mendoza, who lost her